Hey gang, welcome to another episode of Chronicles from the Kit. I'm Chuck Peterson and I'm here with another story for you. So this one is quite an interesting story. I was helping a good friend of mine book bands some years ago. We were trying to book them all over the world, all over the country, all that stuff, and she would have me send out press kits to different venues, look up the venues, see where they could play and all that stuff, and send them emails of their press kit and all that stuff. And so it was quite a fun job for me. And then one evening, she sent me a text saying, she goes, "Hey, I just got an email from somebody who wants to book their Motown tribute band." And I was like, "Oh, that's great." I said, "Yeah, they get a lot of gigs everywhere, so you should be able to, easily book them, because they play everywhere. Everybody knows who they are. People always come out to the show. I think they've toured all over the place, like Europe, Japan, all that stuff." I said, "So that, that should be some great money coming in." And I asked her, I said, "Is it the Motown Sound Review?" And she goes, "No." She goes, "It's not them." She goes, it's a band called the Funk Brothers." And I was like, "Whoa!" I was like, "What?" And she goes, "It's a band called the Funk Brothers." And I said, "Can I give you a call?" And she said, "Yeah, sure." So I called her, and I said, "You got an email from somebody to book the Funk Brothers?" And she goes, "Yeah." I said, "You landed on a gold mine here." And she goes, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Who are the Funk Brothers?" I said, "Those are the cats who played in the studio recording for all the Motown groups from 1959 to 1972. I said, they recorded with the Temps. They recorded with the Four Tops. They recorded with Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, the Supremes, Mary Wells, Marvin Gaye." I said, they were the studio cats who played on all that stuff, right? And she started freaking out. We both started freaking out. I was like, "This is amazing. Okay, this is a great opportunity." So, so the guy that contacted her was a guy named Billy J. Wilson, who was part of the Motown Alumni Association. And so Billy wanted to book the Funk Brothers another tour. The Funk Brothers, they wanted to go back on tour. Well, the remaining Funk Brothers at the time was Uriel Jones, who was playing drums, Eddie Willis on guitar, Joe Messina on guitar, and Jack Ashford, a percussionist, he played the tambourine. And so, and Bob Babbitt, the bass player, he was still alive at the time. He was going to join the tour too. So we were like really excited about this, and I looked up all the places that they toured after the release of Standing in the Shadows of Motown, their documentary. And I looked up pretty much all the places that they have played already, when they toured. And so I was contacting them, just so they'd get back in there. I figured they'd be familiar with them, all that stuff. So during that time, we did this for like a year and a half, trying to book these guys out. And unfortunately, some of the members had passed away. Eddie Willis, he had passed away. Uriel Jones had passed away, and Bob Babbitt had passed away. So the only people that were left pretty much were Joe Messina and Jack Ashford, and they still wanted to do the tour. So, and they were going to have me play drums. Billy, he asked me to send some clips of me playing drums, because the remaining Funk Brothers, they wanted to check it out. Uriel had passed away, but Eddie was still alive at this point. Yeah. yeah, Eddie was still alive at this point. Bob had passed away, and Uriel Jones, the drummer, the remaining drummer, the last drummer, had passed away. So they wanted to see some clips of my playing. So I sent them some videos of me playing, and they said they really enjoyed it, and they wanted to have me join the tour. So because Bob had passed away at that point, I thought, hey, we should get James Jamerson Jr. James Jamerson, he was the first bass player for Motown, the session bass player to play on all those hits before Bob came in. And Billy was like, oh, that's a great idea, so so he did call to see what James Jr. was up to, and I think James was battling cancer at the time, which he had unfortunately succumbed to. I don't know if he succumbed to it during the time of the booking. I think he did, because we were kind of scrambling on, okay, who are we going to get to play bass, And so they were, they had all the acts that were going to, be up front singing. Like Candy Stanton was gonna be on that tour. I think some members of the Temptations, the current version of the Temptations, were going to be on that tour. What is it? Yeah, I forgot who else. I don't remember who else was on the bill, but it was, some quite big names that were going to be on this tour. So I was like, man, we're bound to get a booking for this. But unfortunately, nobody bit. I mean, there's a few places that were accepting, like, yeah, we'd love to have you guys come back and play here, and I contacted this one place, sending them the press kit and all that stuff, and they go, oh, I'm sorry, we only booked the real Motown acts. That was the reply. And so I replied back, I said, this is the real Motown act. I said, if it wasn't for these guys, you wouldn't have the real Motown acts. And he was like, oh, tell me more. So we got on the phone and we talked. I told him their history and all that stuff. And so they were one of the ones that changed their mind and says, yes, we'd love to have you play there. Once you get everything set up with the tour, we'll book some dates and all that. So it was looking kind of grim because, there wasn't a lot of people who were biting. It had been quite a few years since Standing in the Shadows of Motown came out. So I said, oh, what about having them cut a record with some of these guys that are going to be, be on this tour, and get some new faces in there, or get some legends and some new faces in there to help with the album, so that way we kind of put the Funk Brothers, and call it the Funk Brothers with all these different singers, or Funk Brothers and Friends or something like that. And, Billy thought that was a great idea, and the Funk Brothers thought it was a great idea, but they just couldn't, unfortunately, make it happen. So everything just kind of fell to the wayside, and it got to the point where Eddie Willis did pass away, and so it was just Joe Messina and Jack Ashford, and Jack decided to start another band, and tour with them. So, which I think he's still touring, and yeah, recently I think, Jack is the only remaining Funk brother that's alive. And so after all that, we were all kind of sad and disappointed, because we were trying to think of ideas to make this happen and get them back in the limelight again after the documentary. And so Billy called my friend and told her that, tell Chuck, thank you for all that he's done, and thank you for wanting to do the tour. They really enjoyed us playing. They enjoyed us playing so much that the remaining Funk Brothers, which at the time was, Eddie Willis, Joe Messina, and Jack Ashford, he said they want to make him an honorary Funk Brother. So when she told me that, I was kind of taken back. I was like, wow. I was like, that's a very high honor coming from such legends, so I was very blessed by that. I think I did ask to get that in writing, but I think he forgot. It never happened. But it would be nice to have that in writing. Maybe if Billy is still around, I could try to contact him and try to get that in writing. That would be cool, but who knows, But it was just a wonderful time and a wonderful experience just to get to interact with these guys. And even though it didn't happen the way we all would have liked it to happen, but it was still a cool experience anyway. So thank you for listening to my story. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will be back next month with another story for you. So thank you again. God bless.